wallowing through the uncertainty of false righteousness, trailing fragmentary truth. The wind found me, dressed in awkward circumstance, moments of uncertain knowing, pondering recognition, even with kindred souls. Words led to prayer, prayer to ritual, ritual to remembrance. Awakening, I went seeking others. We're reminding each other of past legend, even now as we question our own soul's knowing. We laugh, passing time, sharing passages of favored scriptures, poems and psalms immortalized to paper. He will come again, announcing presence with signs and wonder. Then night will recede, sunrise on the lips of morning. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv, and it's a Sabbath 5 p.m. broadcast here on the East Coast, United States of America. I'm near Athens, Georgia, and I hope that you are finding yourself blessed today. And I want to also give thanks and a shout out to all of you that are in duty to our country and to our flag, that are serving in the various arms of the armed forces in whichever degree and capacity that you are. I also honor my son who's also in the Air Force, and I thank you for your service and for standing for the values and the freedoms, the ideological concepts of which this country and our traditions have been for hundreds of years, and it hasn't been until recently, specifically the past two presidents, that America has been degraded and decimated and the Constitution stripped and soiled and degraded to such a degree that we lost our bearing as a country. And even though we don't rightfully elect the people that are in office, and we can debate and deliberate about that, but in my opinion, specifically at the highest levels, with the president, that we lost that right and that choice a long, long time ago. And even the past few elections, it's been that the presidents have been from the same family, and they've been cousins, and they've been pitted against each other, and they have blood relation for one another, and those things have stood out, and the masses have come to knowledge, come to grips, and come to understanding about that. And that was one of the reasons why I've learned that choice was a mere illusion, as many of you have now, us also. And there has even been a study by, I believe it was like a 12 or 14-year-old girl, for as a project for her school. She traced the bloodlines and the lineages of various presidential candidates, and then come to find out in expanding her research that there were many presidents, almost going back to the very beginning, that are in fact blood related and tied to the royals and the elites of the world that sit on the thrones of major countries today. And so, but I still, even though they have tried for hundreds of years now, because the Masons have been working inside the United States for a very long time. They've tried to destroy this country from within, and they have prepared all of us as legacy and in guiding us and directing the fate and the destiny of this country. They have tried to utilize it to be the strong arm for the elite in what will be the final push for the New World Order. And it's only by the blessing and the grace of God that had been upon us for so long, it's my opinion now that that protection and that grace has been lifted, at least to some degree. But those that are in the armed services and those of you that are true patriotic Americans, citizens seeking to protect our rights and our freedoms, and that only want to serve in a way that is meaningful for yourself. I know a lot have fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and have been generational patriots and servants in various armed forces. And it hurts my heart to see you now being so mistreated and having not only the Veterans Administration but the various presidents and representatives and senators that have decimated the benefits and implementing stop-loss measures and forcing you to be in condition and situation where your mind and your body and your spirit and your soul is frazzled, and that many of you are coming back broken, wounded in heart and in spirit. Your emotional and mental states are shattered almost beyond belief and beyond anything that you can bear, or in being able to pull what remains, the pieces of the puzzle, back together for yourselves so that you can reestablish and realign yourselves with civilian life. It must be the greatest struggle. And so for that, I pray for each of you and your family members and all of your children that you can come to a peace with things you may have done at the directive of the powers that be, that get their directions from the New World Order elites, that have you maybe performing things you may not have wanted to do, but that being duty-bound and being in an occupation where you cannot question or deter, or you may be maligned in some way for not following orders. I know that's got to be the most difficult thing, because so many did join after the events of 9/11 and had no idea that they were being duped, had no idea that it was a shadowy elite part of our own government or individuals within the government and other forces that had aligned, other governments and other secret societies and various intelligence groups that all worked in tangent together to bring about what was the order out of chaos of that day, and the decimation, how they burned to our minds the memory of that event, and have been utilizing it ever since as catalyst for what Cheney spoke of as a war on terror that would not end in our lifetimes. And that ever since then they have been able to utilize the other boogeymen that they have had in the closet or under the bed, these different terrorist groups that they have been funding over decades, to bring them out of the closet and to put a face, Osama bin Laden or al-Zawahiri or whoever the new face is of the terrorist regime. And that oftentimes it's discovered that these people are double agents and that are working for the government as well as the so-called terrorists, and that they are also receiving orders from top down, and that the patriots and the people that are trying to chase the boogeyman and trying to protect the freedoms and the liberty of America, you're not allowed to really capture the true terrorists because they're protected, or you're put in a situation where you're allowed to be slaughtered or killed yourself. And if you do speak up, just as the whole thing that happened with Pat Tillman, who was a true patriot, and having discovered certain things, he was shot point blank. He was assassinated to hide the truth that America was in the wrong war back in that day, and that those people that they were killing and slaughtering, goat herders and Afghani people, and that they really didn't do anything to us. That there could be no way that even hijacking planes, that they could even fly those things, if that's what you believe, or that they could bring down the towers in the way that they were brought down, especially when supposedly only 2 planes hit 2 buildings, and yet you have World Trade Center 7 also going down. But one thing about 9/11, even though a lot of people did join the military and the armed forces, and that they were gung-ho to take revenge on our enemies, and that a lot of people did get played in that way, 9/11 was a trigger for a lot of us in awakening us to, and also to shaking us to the core, forcing us to take notice that something was wrong with the world, that there was more to life than just our complacency and our entertainments and pleasures and the various distractions that we assumed were important for our lives and that held priority for our being. 9/11 burned the memory of terror upon our spirits and forced us to go seeking answers, forced us to struggle to understand things that didn't seem to make sense. And so it caused many of us to get off the fence and to leave the safe comforts of our couches and to turn off the TVs and to seek on the internet and other places for answers that would help us to understand the condition and the state of the world and the impact of what became the New World Order, which had been something that was new to all of us at that time in awakening. It caused us to want to seek out and to understand how it is and why it is that certain forces would align to cause such destruction, and also how it was that even when faced with such terror, how so many were so quick to accept the official story, and that trusted government, and that trusted those powers that be that represented the propaganda that was being repeated over and over, the drum up to war, and how so many believed that Iraq was connected to Osama bin Laden in some way, and that there was just cause for that war as well. How nobody questioned that the military, of which it took months to prepare for action and to put into place, especially ground forces and an assault on other countries with tanks and troops. And I mean, of course, we can airstrike within hours, especially now. But to lay down tanks and all the supporting material and the fuel and all the troops and all the other things that go into supporting a ground assault, those things take at least a few weeks, especially if you're going to be flying across the world to the other side of the world to perform such an assault. And yet within hours, within days, we had already in place, which was another red flag for those that were affected by that particular date and that particular event. And so there was good and bad associated to the events of 9/11. If you can actually find, a silver lining to what happened in that day, because if we could go back, if we could turn the pages and prevent that event from ever happening to world. But there's no accidents. There are no coincidences, in my opinion. Everything has reason. Everything was meant to be. And with that, we know that we entered into a whole new period, that the entire world entered into a space of time, a new episode, a new chapter of life and being for the world that we would never, ever be able to return from or really recover. And so the whole world, established, got heightened in degree to started funding the various security and the anti-terrorist regimes and different campaigns. And so there was massive funding also for the various militaries of the world, and the build-up for the inevitable, almost like another Cold War, all took place. And it seems like now there's a lot of terrorist events, false flag terrorist events, that so many things that have been pulled over the various citizens of the world. I mean, they are doing all kind of, even if it seems like it's little events, even like with the Boston bombing and Sandy Hook in America, they don't care anymore. They're not even trying to hide that these are false flag events. Watcher Ruth says it's to create fear, and that's absolutely true. It has been to create fear. But that's not the focus of the show for today. But I did want to to just honor, the various veterans and those that are associated to service and duty, to that have been true patriots and that are true constitutionalists. I honor all of you, and I thank you for your service to our country. With the rest of the show, I want to just cover some of the aspects of truth. And I guess, 9/11 is one of those things as well, because now it's become imperative that those that are truly seeking truth, that are truly trying to understand the esoteric nature of the Word and the secrets of the Bible, it's become imperative for us to be able to unite the conspiratorial side of what's going on with the world with the prophetic nature of the Bible. And that if you go to ask your various pastors and preachers and ministers and people of authority, and you're seeking guidance and trying to understand the world, and also that of what's scripted within the Word, and I'm not just the New Testament, but also the Old Testament, and to the mythology and the history, and even with fairy tale and childhood fantasy, and with the ancient legends of the world. We're now having to put all of these separate and individual pieces of focus, and because there's each one of those is a different profession, and most people only focus on one part or one aspect of the full summation of the whole. But in my opinion, it's necessary now, and it's required to really get it and to really make sense of everything, to study all things and to find the truth that is underlying all things, and that in relevancy connects, unites everything together. And again, in my opinion, that's what truth does. It helps us to understand all aspects of the world, and also the shadowy part, those things that we normally don't look at and don't understand, how the secret societies and these various shadowy governments and the intelligence services and the false flag events, and how all that lines up with biblical prophecy, even with the presence of the fallen angels, or what the History Channel has now termed the ancient aliens. And even with now those that have been proponents of evolution, they are quick to embrace that the reason that history and the sciences have not been able to find a missing link that unites ape and man, some kind of distant cousin to both races, is because it was the ancient aliens that jumped the gun on evolution, in that they mixed apes with one of their own kind, with one of the alien races, and that's how man was created. And that is the so-called truth of evolution. And so now they're trying to propagate this as the new evolution, and why it doesn't fit in with Darwinism, in that the ancient aliens are the creators of humanity. These kind of things are being propagated on not only the Ancient Alien series now, but by many, many people that have PhD degrees, that have been leaders in different fields of archaeology and that have been well respected by many people and have global audiences, and that they are part of the agenda for what I call and consider to be the strong delusion. But there are more people willing and ready and wanting to accept that the ancient aliens are creators than there are those that will even look at or study the Bible in a way to where it brings forth answers and helps them to understand these difficult topics and to bring them to light on subjects like, even with there being two bloodlines on this planet, that these things are largely ignored by most of the world. I don't really know of a lot of people, even though there are a lot of individuals now that understand this and have been brought to discernment on this. I really don't know of a lot of people that are teaching it in a way that helps people to understand the Gospels and helps people to make sense of the world. I know, and I do recommend Dr. Joy's latest book, Beguiled. The third edition specifically speaks about and it covers the whole issue and topic of Cain being a child of the serpent and the beguilement of Eve and their connections with the royal elites and the New World Order. And also she elaborates on Prince William and the Shroud of Turin and the Antichrist as a cloned image of Christ. In her book, she covers that in great detail. And the reason I mention this also is that for those that are interested, this Wednesday, Dr. Joy will be joining me on Revolution Radio from 8 to 10 p.m. to talk about this subject and these particular topics. And I know that many of you have sent me questions as to the Shroud of Turin and Prince William and the elites over there in the UK, whether Queen Elizabeth will abdicate her throne, if it will, the kingship will pass over, the divine right to rule will pass over Prince Charles, be given directly to his son. These are things that she'll be able to cover and be able to talk about. And also, thank you, Ruth, for putting the link in there. And also, she's very well versed in this particular topic and has been speaking about these things ever since I met her initially. First, I believe it was in 2006 or 2005. It's been a long time now, and we've done a number of different videos together where we've covered and talked about these particular topics and these issues and how it's important to understand the beginning in order to understand how it is that we came to be where we are and also to where we are going. And that many of you that have discovered either of us in whatever capacity and that have listened to us in various guest appearances or where we have been allowed to come on because so many are afraid to affiliate with either of us or to have us on their radio programs, and because they don't want to be tied to the heretics, the blasphemers, or what, a lot of people that don't entertain this as even a possibility, that we are maligned. I'll even tell you about, there was a prophecy conference that was being put together on the West Coast of and there was a number of different people that have their own radio programs, that have been writing their own books. I'm not going to name names, but a lot of very prominent individuals, people that have huge audiences of followers dedicated to studying their work, and that have been on the front line since going back to 2004 and 2005, back when I first woke up to these things. But they had all agreed to be part of this prophecy conference, and everybody was excited to make it happen, and we're working towards it. And then the person that was putting it all together invited both Dr. Joy and I to join with them in doing this prophecy conference. And, we were excited to do so. Both of us then were going to make plans to actually speak about some of these issues and share it with a larger audience, and bring this knowledge to new light. And we thought it would be an awesome opportunity for us to also to be together and to share new insight and new perspective with the other speakers. And one by one, they came together, and they all told the person that was putting this together, the director, told them that they would not do it if we were left on the speaking, if we were left on the role as being potential speakers, and that all of them had united together against she and I to basically they said that if it was either them or us. And so that's the kind of antagonism, that's the kind of treatment that she and I have had to deal with in just talking about the whole Cain thing as being mere possibility. I'm not going to name names, Night Watchman. I don't think that's my place. But it was some very prominent individuals, and they've been on the circuit for a long time. But I just don't feel right doing that, because I don't consider it my place to judge anybody, and I'm not trying to stir up any trouble in any kind of way. I respect all these individuals, even after they did what they did. But it is what it is. And so ever since that time, I've learned slowly and somewhat painfully back then, when I used to actually let this bother me more so than it doesn't affect me in any way anymore. I've had a lot of different radio programs invite me on as guests, and then when they find out the things that I talk about, and people recommend me to come on their shows, and they invite me, and then afterwards they'll quickly uninvite me and won't even, answer email or send reply anymore, not even let me know anything about it. And that kind of thing has happened as well. Many of you are very aware of the whole episode with Coast to Coast, the way that Dr. Joy, when she was invited to be a guest on that program and was supposed to be there for 3 hours, and she was going to be covering a lot of these topics, and they warned her not to speak about this, but somehow it came up. People wanted to know, and they were asking questions in the chat room and trying to guide the direction to having her speak about Cain and these two bloodlines, and how it connects to even with the wars against the giants, the incursion of the Watchers, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, the connections to the New World Order and the Antichrist, the harvest, the separation of the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep, all these different things. And they cut her off, and then they came back on and they told her they were not going to allow her to be, to be guest on the show. And then they quickly invited somebody else in, and she was cut off from Coast to Coast ever since that time. And so, anyways, that's the way that it is. And I appreciate all of you that that are willing and open to listen to this information as possibility, because in my opinion it holds such great relevance to each one of us. And this is just, the whole Cain thing is just one small part. Well, not a small part. It is a big part of all the stuff that I do cover, but it's only one of the things that I talk about. There's so many things that are unique in what I teach and the things that I talk about, because I think what makes what I speak on unique as far as presentation is that I cover all of the wisdom texts and all of the ancient mythologies and legends, and even the Sumerian side of it, and I can talk about the Anunnaki, and I've read all of those books and texts, and I've studied a lot of other mythologies and ancient legends, and have been led to a perspective that unites them all together. And I've read all of what I can find as far as the Old Testament, New Testament, the pseudepigraphal, apocryphal, Dead Sea Scroll, Nag Hammadi codices, and any kind of extra biblical and extra canonical texts. And it helped me to make sense of what we were speaking about earlier, about how, as seekers of truth, we are being required now to study all things and to make sense of the world at a deeper and a very more profound level. And that if we are only limiting ourselves to not that, it doesn't take, not that you cannot find this kind of discernment and this kind of revelation only in the canon of the Bible, the Old and New Testament, specifically the 80-book original King James Version of the Bible. Because you can. It's just that when you have a foundation for truth and you look to some of the other books, it provides greater detail, in my opinion. Just like with the way that Genesis 6 and the book of Jude make mention of the fallen angels, the sons of God that mated with the daughters of man and created a race of giants known as the men of renown, and that there were giants in the earth before and after the flood of Noah's day. Very profound and meaningful 3 verses of Scripture there in Genesis 6. But just reading those 3 verses, and even just reading Jude 1, many people would not be able to understand nor tie together the fallen angels with what we are dealing with as the ancient aliens. And that if you were to read the book of Enoch and to study it, it helps to elaborate on and to provide greater detail as to who the fallen angels were, and specifically the watchers, because this text is about the watchers, the second incursion of the fallen angels, that the 200 watchers that rebelled and left their first estate, as is also mentioned in the book of Jude, that it gives you great detail on the specifics of what they did, and that those that are proponents and hold the perspective of the sons of God being the sons of Seth, and that it was only the children of Adam, the sons of Seth, that were the ones that took on daughters, and that somehow giants were born from them. Absolutely so silly, as Ruth says in the chat room. That, how are you going to have giants born from the children of Seth marrying daughters? It makes no sense. And so, looking to the book of Enoch, we get great detail as to the 200 watchers leaving their first estate, leaving their place of habitation, and that were lusting after the daughters of humanity, and that knowing they were about to engage in great evil and to break a law, a commandment of God. Welcome, Nancy. A commandment of the Most High in taking wives and birthing their own children, and that they were, another book, the Kebra Nagas, which is one of those Ethiopic texts that are very revered by the Ethiopian people, just like the book of Enoch, which is still part of their canon, as is the book of Jubilees or Jasher, one of them. But that the Kebra Nagas in chapter 100 of that text, Kebra space Nagast for those that are interested, the Kebra Nagas not only speaks about how the watchers became jealous of Adam and of humanity, and that they were supposed to be the teachers, the messengers, and that they were be the intercessors of both the Most High God and the Word, the Son, and also with the children of humanity. They decided to ask the Son to put them into bodies of flesh so that they could come to the earth. And he told them, he warned them to not break the commandments and not to go after temptation or to fall into evil, to join the rebel angels that were already here upon the planet and the children of Cain who were propagating evil. And he told them, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to put you in the flesh and send you down there, but don't fall away from the commandments. Don't break the law. Don't get involved in evil. And having been placed into male bodies and to take on flesh form, they immediately made a pact with each other to take wives and to birth their own children. And having done so, they broke the law and they broke the warning. They went against the warning that the Word, the Son, had told them before placing them into flesh. And because they did so, they were banished from any chance of redemption or of being able to have part in salvation. And they were also stripped of their immortality. And so, anyways, different texts like that give you great detail as to what happened and how it was that the Watchers were even able to mate with the daughters of Cain. Specifically in that text, it mentions the daughters of humanity as being the daughters of Cain. And so these kind of things, even with the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have the story of the Book of Giants and the corruption of the earth and how it is that, it's mentioned in the New Testament. Christ speaks about how the days, the final generation and the end of days would be as the days of Noah. And unless one has this perspective and this understanding, you would not be able to make sense of even that particular statement. And there are so many things that Christ talks about within the scriptures that would not make sense unless you understood about the fallen angels and also about Cain being a son of the devil, and that there was a group of people, a whole lineage, a line of people that are dedicated to wickedness and destruction, and that have been warring against the sons of Adam since Cain and Abel. And that have just chaos and control, and that this line has been working and engaging with the fallen angels since even before the fall of the Watchers. That they were involved with the rebel angels and the 1/3 that had joined Lucifer in rebellion that were cast out of the upper heavens. Those powers and principalities, the rulers of darkness, the wickedness in high places that were already in control and had assumed authority over what is talked about in the first book of Adam and Eve as being the dark earth. And so that's why I look to and have read many of these extra biblical texts. And I don't say that all of them are inspired. Matter of fact, I don't claim any of them to be inspired. I'm just saying that there are things of interest written within them that seems to help people to understand what is the canon. And it's my opinion that the work of Ivan Panini, who spent decades bringing out all these different mathematical codes that are encrypted within the King James Version of the Bible, and that the number 7 is repeated in various ways. That Night Watchman had asked me at the very beginning of the show to do a show on how it was that astrology and what is written into the constellations and into the stars was the first religion, and how it speaks about Christ and how he would be born of a virgin, how he would be Savior, Messiah, and how he would be killed, and that he would be the one to bring finality to all of us through the judgment at the end of days. And these things are written in Jonathan Gray's book, The Forbidden Secret. I did do a show about this at one point called Signs in the Sun, the Moon, and the Stars, and it was about this topic. But I would recommend those of you that have not to read the book Forbidden Secrets by Jonathan Gray. I think it's so well written and covers so much information and detail from, again, all lines of study. He covers biology and mathematics, and talks about Panini's work and how he had found this mathematical code which absolutely verifies that the texts are inspired and that they had to have come from the mind of God, that they couldn't have just been, put together, even though we know King James was a Freemason and also a bisexual, and that he was involved with the secret societies. And yet there was a mathematical code that is interjected into all of the books and the scriptures which make up the official canon. And so, and not to mention that, it's 100% prophetic, and that everything that the Most High has encoded within it and said that would happen has, and that there are still future prophecies which are contained within it, which also aligned to things that are yet to come, but which will absolutely take place. And also that there is a Bible code which is also written into the text, and that there's no way, even if thousands of years ago when the first parts of the Old Testament were being written, even if you had a computer and you could figure out a way to encode it with all of these different things, it's just beyond the capacity of man to do such. And so that's why I know that the Old and the New Testament are absolutely the Word of God, and you can bank on it. And so, that's also why when I study these extra biblical texts and these extra canonical texts, and also even with the Sumerian teachings, anything that is different in opinion, I will base my truth and the things that I believe to be true on the foundation of the Word, on the canon of the Old and the New Testament, and that if something contradicts, then I don't align with it. Because I know that Even though these other books bring out great detail, and what many people, think that they contradict the Bible, like the whole thing with Cain being a son of the serpent, and they don't believe that, that is written anywhere within the Bible, but it's written everywhere within the Bible. And that when you are able to understand it and discern it this way, it helps you to understand the Bible in a greater, more detailed, and very profound manner. More so than what most, people, pastors, preachers, ministers, and those that are the authoritative voices on the gospel, they don't even understand it this way. And so, in my opinion, which I don't consider myself to be any authority in any way on truth or those things that are contained within the gospel, but I do believe that I've been led to revelation which helps me to understand it and to understand what I'm reading when I study the Gospels. And that in my mind, people that would open themselves up to new possibility, that it would absolutely help them to understand and to grasp things that may not make sense. Welcome, Professor. And so, I consider those of you that are here, those of you that have been studying, that have been led to revelation, that seek to make yourself approved of God, and that have dedicated your lives to seeking truth, to understanding the Word at a greater capacity than what is being taught in mainstream churchianity. You are the wisdom keepers. As I stated in the description of this show, you are the keepers of the secrets. And those that are really seeking, really looking, they're going to be led to you. Because there's something in that is just an understanding that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I'm sure you probably heard this before. But this seems to have truth and to have relevance within it. And that when you are truly dedicated to the kingdom as priority for your lives, and to understanding the gospel in a way that most do not, that the Father and the Son will lead you, will guide you to understanding, and it will be other. Sometimes it will be different scriptures or different extra-biblical, extra-canonical texts, and a lot of times it will just be individuals. And that they will have the keys, they will have the right books or the right perspective or the right discernment to help people to make that next to overcome something they've been struggling with, and to make sense of something that has been difficult for them in their seeking to comprehend something about the world or something about the scripture. And that a lot of you are in that place now to where you are going to be the teachers for a lot of these individuals. And it may be your own family members. It may be acquaintances or just people that you meet out there in your daily lives, in going about your own business and doing what you do. And, you know, there was a time for many of us when we first came to understand certain things, and that, especially with 9/11, I know when I first woke up after 9/11, I wanted to shake everybody. I wanted to, talk to everybody about these things, give them DVDs, give them links, have them study and come to know the things that I was learning and coming down to understanding on, and that all of this information and these pursuits that were driving my life and my time and my focus, that I wasn't watching, TV. I wasn't watching the normal shows or going to the movies, and all I wanted to talk to my friends and family members about, and those that were closest to me, was about these things that I was learning about. Back then it was 9/11, things of whatever it was I was bringing a revelation on. That's all I wanted to talk about. And I found that, I was ostracizing myself to my family members and to my friends, and that a lot of them, were running as fast as they could from me, and that they would leave me out in their group gatherings, and that I was okay with that because, I was completely focused on learning more and to listening to all of the different people that have been out there for a long time and bringing forth different information, that I was trying to study and listen to everything. And but I've learned, and I'm sure that you have as well, that you can't force people. Just as they talk about how you can't you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Same kind of thing. And so I've now really learned to honor everybody for where they are, and that even though they may do things of which I consider just waste of time and pursuits that I wouldn't spend my time and effort and focus upon, I honor them for where they are and for the things that they are doing, whatever they may be. And I have also learned since that time that I can't take it all so serious, and that I do have to find joy and peace and moments of serenity where I take time to laugh and to find humor in whatever, in the day, in a joke, and to be able to laugh about things and to not have all of this on me so that it weighs me down and makes me just too serious in nature to where I'm not even fun to be around. And I know for a lot of people that this is where you may be, because I've talked to a lot of you, some that have called me, and that you're struggling with, what your husband may be doing and going to school and trying to, create an occupation or a career, and is it even worth, going to school, getting your degrees? Is it worth even pursuing whatever it is? And you have to, again, honor people for where they are, let them do the things that they're going to do, and realize that most people are completely focused on this world, on this carnal world, and that their goals and their dreams are oriented in such way. And And that being part of the elite and and then when I talk about the elite, I'm talking about the elect and the minority of the righteous, those that are servants and disciples to Christ, to serving, as priests instead of kings, that follow the narrow way. That those are the elite, in my opinion, because to have part in salvation and to have your eternal inheritance secured through Jesus Christ, Yahushua, that is the most important thing, and why we are really here. And that remembrance and a return to our first state has everything to do with accepting that salvation that has been so graciously extended to us by our Lord and King. And so if you find yourself where I was, to where I couldn't take time to, even watch a comedy or even to watch a movie, you still got to laugh. You still got to find joy in life. And so do find balance, because that's what I had to learn. I had to learn to find balance, to honor people for where they are, and to live, to still live, and even though my life is still fully every day, all the things that I do are about my commitment to priority, to the kingdom, and to my dedication to being a foot washer. But still, I take time to enjoy, nature and going outside and just watching the roses bloom and planting things, even though I'm not the one that plants them. But I do find great enjoyment in watching the flowers open and bloom, and feeding the birds, and just watching all the birds come and eat, and putting boxes out for bluebirds and their families, and just watching my cats and hanging out with them and being with them and taking time to pet them. All those things are the simple things of life that bring joy, that we have to remember to do those things as well, because it can get absolutely overbearing, and that many of us, if we don't find that balance, that our family members, our children, our loved ones, our wives, our spouses, and our parents, they don't even want to be around us. And then they make fun of us for being the helicopter crew, or talk about us behind our backs, or our friends come together and are having cookouts, and they're talking about us being stuck on the internet listening to some conspiratorial something, or that all we can do is read the Word, which I absolutely Ruth says my kids think I'm a Fruit Loop, and I was that way for a long time, Ruth, so you're in good company. But my son has come around since then, and I pray that happens for each one of you, that your family, your loved ones, your friends, that they will be brought to discernment. But the reality is that most will not, and that the elect, the righteous, those that are truly of the wheat, will be a few, will be minimal, will be a minority. And so, Do what you can to plant the seeds, to keep up your study, and the Father and the Son will lead people to you. And you'll know when this happens. You'll know when this comes up, because they will be ready, and they will be hungry, and they will be wanting to know about these things. And you will have the answers to make sense of things that they never thought possible. Because you, as the wisdom keepers, as the holder of the secrets, you're going to be able to explain to them about not only the esoteric side of it, but also the biblical side of it, the historical side of it, the archaeological side of it, the geological side of it, connected with fairy tales and fantasy and science fiction and childhood stories and even things of comic books, you know. You're going to unify all those things. And is not the story of the gospel going back to even before the war in heaven and the unfolding, the fall of humanity, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, the incursion of the watchers, the creation of the giants, the wars between the giants and humanity, the institution of paganism, ritual, blood ritual, sacrifice of children and prisoners, and the worship of the feathered serpent, the worldwide flood, the wars between the children of Jacob and the children of Esau, and then the Moses, Joseph, and then Moses, and the freedom, the Exodus, and being led out of the bondage of Egypt, and then the wars between Joshua and the sons of Anak, the giants in the land, their connections to the Pharisees, the David and Goliath, the children of David fighting against Saph, the other giants, the lion men of Moab, all these really strange and esoteric things, and the connections with the New World Order to the Pharisees, the parable of the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep, the return of Christ, his coming into the flesh, offering salvation to all of us, dying on the cross, signs being written in the sun, the moon, and the stars. All these things, is not that the greatest story ever told? And that story encompasses fantasy, science fiction, fairy tale, mythology. I mean, who could even make up such an incredible story? And for this to be the reality that we are all dealing with as a world, and especially now with, the ancient aliens being and the strong delusion and the connections to their being the gods that created humanity, the whole missing link and the neoteric theology that is the fallen angels being our creators, and how that's tied to the strong delusion, and that even the very elect, the most righteous, would be deceived if it were possible, that there should be no flesh left unless the days be shortened, that these are as in the days of Noah, and that we are the fig tree generation. It's incredible that when you have understanding on all these things, the story that is written into Scripture that covers the fullness of the Old and the New Testament, because the Old Testament and the New Testament, they are one story, and you cannot separate them in any way. If you don't understand one, you don't understand the other. That Christ was the fulfillment of the Old Testament, and that He's the New Testament revealed. I mean, if you can explain it to your children and help them to understand the gospel in this profound way and give them discernment on the things that we're talking about with the fallen angels and the ancient aliens and the two bloodlines, seed lines, their connection to the New World Order, you will absolutely have them interested, and they'll carry the Bible with them everywhere they go, and they will want to read every word of it. And so, I just wish you protection. And I pray that the Father and the Son, that they keep you in their grace and in their, definitely in their protection, and that they allow you to align your will with that of theirs. And I'm praying for myself as well. And that all of your family members, your loved ones, your children, that they be brought to similar discernment so that you can share conversation with them on a more profound and very deep level, and that your dinners, your evening meals, and that your conversations be guided by and led to conversation in such way to where with our words and with our actions, with our deeds, everything that we do, that we speak about, give honor and glory and all praise to the Most High and to the Son for all the things that they do for us, and that we recognize the blessings that the Creator has brought upon and granted to all of us, because we are so very blessed to understand the things that we understand and to be able to see truth in all things everywhere, and that we are no longer of the world, that we are no longer part of the churchianity that is still deceived and that still is involved in paganism and idolatry, and that still unknowingly worship Satan or Samael or Beelzebub or Ishtar, whatever fallen angel that they're worshiping, that most of the world still worships these pantheon of false gods without understanding, and that we are not to be led astray in such ways, and that we can understand, even with all the various holidays, how they are trying to mislead us, and that when the bobbleheads on TV, the government, or mainstream news, whatever it is, when they lie to us and they're with their propaganda, and they're trying to lead us astray into certain things. Every flu season they want us to take the vaccine. How it is that because we are blessed to have knowledge and to have discernment, that we are not led astray in those kind of ways. And that there's so many ways in which the Father and the Son bless us on a mental, emotional, spiritual, physical levels, that when you have this connection, you have this recognition, how we see the Creator in all aspects of the creation, and we recognize that every moment is holy and sacred, and that everything we have chance to do is such a huge blessing. And that we recognize our mortality, we recognize that we are not promised any more tomorrows, and that we relish this day and this moment, and that we enjoy beyond what most others do the opportunities that we have to share with our family members, to hug our children, to tell our loved ones of our affection, how we feel to them, to honor our parents as we do our God, to thank them for the blessings of life and for all that they have done for us as well. I mean, what a huge, huge blessing all of that is. And so, I just give thanks and humble myself and honor and prayer and thanksgiving for all chances and all opportunities, and I just give so much thanks, praise, and blessing to the Father and the Son. And I thank each of you for taking the time to join me and to be part of my family and my fellowship, and that I find such joy and comfort in my relationships with each of you as well. And so, until Wednesday, join me Wednesday evening, 8 to 10 p.m., Revolution Radio, Studio B. Dr. Joy will be joining me, and we'll be talking about Beguiled the Third in the series and covering some of the things that we've been talking about here. God bless all of you. Good night.